I thought I did too.
It is now 5:30. This time we will call to order the meeting of Monday, June 7th, 2021. City Attorney, is there anything you'd like to say before we move to closed session?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If the City Council so moves, the City Council will go into closed session to discuss those items agendized for closed session discussion, which would be item number 1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9A. The title of that case is Elizabeth Williams versus City of Hollister et al. In San Benito Superior Court, case number CU 2000203. And item number 2, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9B, 2 potential cases. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
This time we'll move to closed session.
Were you able to reach out to any other cities about that, any type of paint they use at intersections for the art stuff?
We did, we got some information.
It's
Most,
important because if it gets wet, you'll have motorcycles going down.
yeah. We decided, we even reached out to our little league something here and we recommended, it's, I forgot what it was, and it's not as expensive either.
Oh, how about that? Does it last?
It lasts better than the paint that the Eco whatever.
Okay, yeah.
But it doesn't last as long as.
Thermal fire and stuff, yeah.
But we're only looking at it, for, I think he said a 2 year duration, and we'll figure it out, but we also, council also approved a budget for it up to not to exceed 4,000 annually. So if we go out there and we want it permanent, then we have the funding for it.
To touch it up?
Yes, exactly.
Do you guys have an estimate for what you think of the intersection?
Yeah, I think that's
Thank you, everyone. At this time, we are going to resume the meeting of Monday, June 7th, 2021. Vice Mayor Resendez, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. Ready, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Roll call vote. Roll call. As I have it.
Councilmember Perez,
Here.
Councilmember Burns,
Here.
Vice Mayor Resendez,
Present.
Mayor Velasquez,
Here.
City Manager Miller,
Here.
City Attorney Epperson,
Here.
Interim Police Chief Reynoso.
Here.
Thank you. Agenda verification. The amended agenda for the City of Hollister City Council regular meeting of June 7th, 2021 was posted on the bulletin board on June 3rd, 2021 at 4:15 p.m. per Government Code Section 54954.2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now going to move to the consent agenda. Are there any items council would like to pull?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item A4.
Are there any others?
Mayor Velasquez, Jim Burns, I'd like to pull A5.
Thank you. Do we have any from the public?
There was a person from the public who wanted to speak on 4. I thought it was A4, but it wasn't specific, but it's pulled anyway, so.
Okay. Is that the only item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Against? Unanimous. We'll now move to item A4.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I pulled this item is that I heard from the constituent that requested the item be on the agenda is that the author, as of Friday, moved the item, or the bill, I'm sorry, to an inactive folder, which means the bill died. So I respectfully request that we withdraw the item at this time.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from council? Speaker? Oh, it's not, I'm muzzled, huh? The speaker, please. Public?
She's no longer on.
She's no longer on. Is there any other speakers?
I have one speaker, Elias Salinas.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak. So I am wanting to do two things. I understand the mayor posted about the dog park being open.
No, this is,
and-
we're on consent right now.
We're on item
Oh.
A4, Elia.
Oh, to pull the consent item?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I would like to pull the consent item regarding AB 1216. Is that I believe that's the first item?
That's what we are
13-16.
talking about now.
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm so sorry, I just turned on, I apologize.
Just so you know,
Okay.
the item was withdrawn, in case you didn't hear that.
Oh, I did not, so thank you. Okay, then I have no comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes,
moved.
Mr. Mayor. I request that we withdraw item A4 from the agenda.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second.
Second.
Mr. Burns. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll move to item A5. Mr. Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, my question would relate to A5, 6, and 7.
We can
And-
only discuss A5
Right.
for this.
Okay. But the question would be similar, as in, I just am curious what the cost to the city is as it relates to having to do the closures and sending city staff out to do that and pick that, that equipment up after the event has been closed. And my hope is that there is a way that we are recovering those costs.
Thank you, sir. Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, I mean, we get a minimal fee, but yeah, I would say probably the cost to do the setup, depending on the different size closures, yeah, we are not recovering those costs.
Do we-
Actually, we don't receive a fee for street closures, for parade permits, or for parade permits or block parties, which is the only way anyone other than PD or fire can close the street. There is no charge. If we do a public assembly permit, the charge is $100 set by resolution years ago.
Thank you both. I'm going to support this as I would for all of those items. However, I would like to see the city move forward to assess what our true costs are, and this is a great opportunity to do that, since we're going to do it, I presume, if it passes. And then I'd like to see us move forward to at least strive to be budget neutral where and when we can in relation to these costs, because they're actually, direct and out-of-pocket expenses. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Correct. And just so council, we have tracked these costs in the past, so we can probably figure this out roughly what an item costs. And then we can bring back a item for council to reset our fees to recover those costs from the requested party.
Thank you, City Manager. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Do we have any questions from the public?
Elias Salinas? Elliot, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I'm having a bad time here. Just real quick, I realize that you already went on item 4, but a question, Mayor. I think that should be related to the city attorney. I do not believe that Councilman Resendez is allowed to make any motions on that because he is an employee of a chartered school. So can we get a clarification on that, please? Thank you.
I'm
Go
not
ahead,
aware
Mr.
of any
Attorney.
financial conflict there could be between Councilmember Resendez and AB 1316. It's speculative and distant and remote at best. And with that said, the matter's been dealt with already on the agenda.
We already dealt with it, but the answer, just so we're clear, there would, highly unlikely there's a conflict.
I have no more speakers, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you. Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Mr. Mayor, excuse me, before we go on, I did not, we skipped over the closed session report.
Oh,
May I
so
do
did
that
I?
now?
Sorry, sir. Well, we're going to go back to, darn it. City Attorney, will you please report out of closed session?
I will, thank you. Just a few minutes late. The report out of closed session is that the City Council discussed in closed session those items agendized for closed session discussion as I read into the record prior to moving into closed session. And direction was given to staff. The City Council recessed from closed session at 6:21 p.m. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We're now going to move to public input. This is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on any item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the city clerk before speaking. When the city clerk calls your name, please come to the podium, state your name and city for the record, and speak to the city council. If you are joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining us by Zoom using a cell phone, please press *9. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note, state law prohibits the city council from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda.
Susan Logue? Susan, go ahead.
Hi, this is Susan Logue with the Friends of the Library. I wanted to let the City Council know that the library is now opened Saturday and Sunday, and they have what they call an afternoon kind of browsing where people can go in and go through the library, but there's a certain amount of people who can go in at that time. They still have all the curbside going on and the anything available through Wi-Fi. Mostly what they wanted to let everyone know was that they're going to start their annual summer reading program, and the summer theme is Reading Colors Your World. So if any of the local children families would like some more information, they can register by calling the library or going to their website. We continue to reach out to the community and meet their needs as best we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
I think Ms. Salinas wanted to make a comment on public comment unless she has not raised her
Elia?
hand.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did. I apologize. I was late to the meeting. So just so we're clear, Mr. Mayor, because you mentioned earlier, and if you mentioned late, there is no public attendance at locally or currently at city council meetings, because you asked for them to come forward to the podium, and just confirming that there isn't anything until June 15th, that no one can go into the chambers yet. And then two more things real quick. California law prohibits recording any conversations without both parties knowing that the conversation is being recorded. I would strongly recommend for city staff from this day forward to let the other person know that you're going to be recording the conversation for your protection purposes. I strongly recommend this because sometimes people take notes, sometimes they don't take notes, and then when something is said, the other party is very quick to say that is not how it happens. And I strongly recommend that I believe the staff should start doing that just to protect the liability of each individual staff. Today I read that the mayor has requested that the dog park is going to be opening up this weekend, and he's requested people to come on Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock to help pull weeds. And people have been posting on Facebook about that particular weed, and maybe the staff can confirm on that particular weed cannot just be pulled out. It'll actually cause it to grow even more. I would suggest that the public not do that. I would request that you reconsider either the staff or whomever the contractor was to put the grass out there, that they either redo it or they do the cleanup. The taxpayers have already paid for this, and I find it a little silly to ask the citizens to come out and do manual labor under the volunteer purposes, to help do this. And I think, if it were something else, maybe, but not this. Also, those thorns can cause injury, and I would not like to see the city be placed in liability by having people come out there and help and cause injury, and then placing the city in some kind of liability because somebody gets an infection and it could get worse. So that's what I have to say today. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move to item D1, City Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mayor. A citizen made a comment that we were opening chambers up to June 15th. That was the intent until we just found out that the governor decided to, sounds like potentially not sticking to the June 15th date, and we will open up the chambers once the governor opens up the different requirements for public. And then as far as the weed at the dog park, staff has been working with other individuals to come up with a solution for that also. And
If I could add to that, I know
sure,
that's-
go right ahead.
I'm going to be there with my kids. I'm going to be helping pull those weeds. It's a beautiful park. It was done well. There's weeds nearby which caused a problem in the past, which is going to continue to cause a problem. But I'm excited about this, and I'm excited about helping on Wednesday at 8 in the morning. Thank you.
We appreciate anybody's help, our volunteers.
Thank you, sir. Is that it?
That's it for, sorry, D1, yes.
Item D2?
Believe the chief had one.
Yes, I did attend a training, May 24th through the 26th, put on by the California Police Chiefs Association. The training is succeeding as a police chief, developing a mindset for success, and it was a 3-day training that I attended.
Thank you, Chief. We will now move.
And then Christine, or your city clerk also has one.
I took a class on maximizing supervisory skills for the first line supervisor. It was a 4-hour class, half day, and I believe I have the second part 2 of that on June 16th.
That concludes D2.
That's it. Thank you very much. We're going to now move to public hearings, item E1.
Maria, go ahead.
Good evening, council and council members. This is Maria. I am the Cannabis Affairs Manager with the City of Hollister. Item number 1 was brought to you previously, and the council had tabled the item for tonight, June 7th. It is for the revocation of an approved cannabis regulatory permit number 2017-273 for LLXP Corporation. Their business was previously, or it's located at 1971 Airway Drive. And tonight, staff is recommending that the City Council holds a public hearing, hear the appellant's statement, and motion to either overturn or uphold the city manager's action that was again to revoke the cannabis regulatory permit to operate a cannabis manufacturing facility issued to Nicholas and Joseph Maxwell, and the corporation is LLXP. If there are any questions, I'm here to answer as best as I can, and I believe Officer Wells is present as well to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Do we have a representative from this company that would like to speak before we open a public hearing? Is that correct, City Attorney?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, we were having a sidebar, and I don't believe we heard what you said. Would you mind repeating?
Basically asked if there was any comments from the council, and then if the representative from this company is here, would they like to speak before we open a public comment or a public hearing?
That would be fine.
Mayor Velasquez?
Yes, sir.
I do have a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So, Ms. Mendez, was the business owner property representative, were they made aware of tonight's hearing, and were they given ample notice that the hearing was scheduled to happen tonight?
It's my understanding that the city attorney had been working with the Maxwell's attorney, and at our last meeting, he was present as well, the Maxwell's attorney. So I'm pretty sure there was enough notice for them to know that the hearing was tonight.
And Councilmember Burns, that's correct, and he was present via Zoom at the last meeting when the council moved it to this evening's meeting.
Okay, so Mr. Epperson, then he has had due notice?
Yes, he has.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Mendez.
We believe he's here.
Yeah, we believe he's outside, but we had told everybody that we are closed to the public. So I believe they're providing him the information to
He's
sign up.
available on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
He is available on Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question, Mayor.
I had notified also the Maxwell Joseph that we weren't allowing the public into our meetings just yet, and I told him I'd let him know that if anything changed, I'd let him know, but nothing has changed. So I did notify him.
Thank you.
To clarify, is that Mr. Maxwell on Zoom or their representative?
Mr. Maxwell.
Okay, I think they're probably going to have their representative speak on behalf. I think that's the issue currently. And I think he should be calling in, I'm assuming here.
Correct, we're giving him the login information.
Okay. We'll wait for that to happen.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering, might we pass this until we can get this connection created and move on in the agenda?
I think the problem is we've opened public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
We have Joseph Maxwell ready to go, so maybe he could tell us whether it's him that's going to be speaking or if he has.
If we can hear from Mr. Maxwell, that'd
Yes.
be great. Mr. Maxwell?
Mr. Maxwell, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Joseph Maxwell. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay. Yep, so I think there may have been some miscommunication, but I think David Morales, our representative, was going to be there. It sounded like if we may have had some documentations we maybe wanted to bring to the public hearing, so I don't know how we work that, but I think that he'll join the Zoom he was going to be representing.
I believe I see him calling in now. Probably a few more minutes.
Yeah, it would be up to the council if you want to allow him in or not.
Given the nature of the proceeding, I realize that we're not generally letting the public in, but given the nature of this particular proceeding and there's been a continuation, it is up to the council if you want to make an exception for this particular.
How does the council
instance.
feel about making an exception? Go ahead, sir.
Mayor Velasquez, I would support that in the interest of moving this process forward.
I'd like for him to call in.
Mr.
Have him call in.
Have him call in. Okay.
It's just kind of hard because there are documents that we would want to, so it's kind of hard to have a hearing on a subject without being able to interact.
I understand, sir, and it's one of the reasons we asked to get that information ahead of time.
Okay, that makes sense. Is he on?
He's trying to be connected here.
Can I speak?
Yes.
He's having a difficult time getting on. So he's asking if we can continue other items on the agenda?
On public hearing, those three items that pertains to
All three of them?
their case. And we opened public hearing already, so.
And just so we're clear, Mr. Maxwell, the reason I'd like for him to call in is because if we allow him to come in, then that's not fair to the other members of the public that were not allowed to come in, and it's been properly noticed. So I just want to make that very clear for the public to understand, and you as well, sir. Thank you.
Why don't we go ahead and take a
Paul's.
5-minute break or 3-minute break until he can get set up and going on this.
Hello?
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, this is David Morales. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. All right, this time we're going to resume the meeting. If everyone's back on. Mr. Morales, go ahead.
I'm gonna need just a moment to get situated here. I apologize. So, council members, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I have some concerns because it was very difficult to speak last time because the microphone is shut off and there's not an ability to respond unless unless the clerk turns my mic back on. Also, it's very difficult to submit any documents into the administrative record. So I would request that I be allowed to submit documents in the administrative record that I brought with me this evening so that those can be considered. How can I handle that logistically?
As soon as we're done with your presentation, we can collect it at the door. Would that be okay? All right yes, we'll collect it at the door.
Okay, great. And also, as I indicated previously, I'd like to assert LLXP's objection to the fact that these proceedings are being held in open session. And we would request that the matter be considered in closed session rather than an open session. In 2018, LLXP previously appealed a recommended revocation of its permits. And at that time, the Hollister Police Department intended to present information related to the proposed permit revocation, and the department and the city required that the information be disclosed only in closed session because it was confidential and related to their ongoing investigation. During our last meeting, staff incorrectly reported to your council that the last time we had these discussions, they were held in both closed and open sessions. Having attended those hearings myself, I can report to the council from my personal knowledge that all the allegations against LLXP's responses, the council's deliberations, its voting, and its final decision were all conducted in closed session back in 2018 regarding some of these same issues. And once the open session convened, staff reported out to the public the council's decision from closed session. So contrary to this past practice and the legal interpretation by the police department and the city back then, now it appears that the city intends to present some of the same confidential information relating to their investigation and their proposed revocation in open session. So LLXP would like to voice its objection to the city using a different process and conducting different treatment of LLXP in this case. We would request an explanation why LLXP is now receiving different treatment from before and different treatment from other permittees in similar circumstances. LLXP made at least 4 written requests for information to the city regarding the basis of the proposed revocation. And as we discussed a little bit later during this hearing, I'm happy to explain more detail in this regard, but the city has consistently failed to respond to these requests. Now the city again proposes to disclose that information for the first time publicly in open session and without any prior notice to LLXP. Again, we're concerned that this information may be erroneous as it was in the past, and certainly some of it we know is, and that it may potentially disparage LLXP and any affiliated persons and cause harm to the reputation without any available remedy or recourse. We're concerned that the city may want to disclose some confidential, private, or disparaging information that would deny LLXP the opportunity to seek a protective order without prior notice. And we're particularly concerned that the information again appears to be erroneous, just like last time, at least in part. And it appears that maybe the intent is to in fact now disparage LLXP or any persons affiliated with LLXP by using those previously determined unsubstantiated allegations. So just as we stated during the last scheduled hearing on this matter, we're concerned that this apparent plan to surprise LLXP at this hearing appears retaliatory and improper, and it may violate LLXP's rights to due process and to equal protection, among other rights. Therefore, we preliminarily object to the proposed disclosure in open session today and request that all proceedings be held in closed session, as was the city's past practice, with regard to LLXP and with regard to other permittees under the same or similar circumstances. We request that no information be disclosed outside of closed session, and we object to the fact that the city has intentionally withheld from LLXP the specific grounds and documents on which it is basing its recommendation. LLXP is being denied the right to notice and an opportunity to be heard. It is being denied an opportunity to seek a protective order or other remedy through the city or through the courts. LLXP may be entitled to protect the confidentiality of this information and to seek potential protection against this disparagement. We respectfully request that the city decide at this point whether or not it will hold these hearings in closed session as it has in the past. If the city decides to proceed differently this time and to proceed in open session, then we respectfully request the city attorney cite legal authority supporting the city's decision to treat LLXP differently in this case relative to the last time we discussed these issues and relative to the other permittees who were heard in closed session. Following this discussion and explanation, LLXP would like to continue with its presentation regarding these issues today.
Thank you, sir. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, among the options the City Council has, one of them would be to note the objections and move on with the hearing.
At this point, we will note the objections and we are going to move on. Gary, is that finish your statement, sir?
I have not finished my statement. Thank you for noting the objection. So you are going to proceed in open session?
Yes, please hold for a second. Councilmember Resendez.
I can certainly understand their objection to having this hearing in closed session versus open session. I'm just wondering, before we decide what we're going to do, what are our options at this point? And what would be the proper protocol?
The city's protocol for this type of matter is to proceed with it as a public hearing, as the city's doing.
Very well, thank you.
Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Epperson, can you refresh my memory? And I've only been on council 5 or so months, but it seems to me we had a like process maybe 2 or 3 months ago involving a different business that we did in open session. And so, is my recollection accurate?
Councilmember Burns, that's correct. How long ago it was, I do not recall, but your general statement of how it was conducted is absolutely correct, yes.
So then to move forward in open session on this matter would be consistent with our most recent past
Yes,
practice.
It would be.
Thank
Yes,
you.
it would be.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Continue, sir.
Thank you very much. May I please call the city manager for examination?
Yeah, this is not a court hearing, so we're not going to cross-examine each other here. We're just hearing your statement, and then we're going to go to the public hearing, open to the public, and then we'll ask questions of the council members. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to your statement?
I do. If I'm not going to be allowed to obtain any information from the city manager, I'll proceed with our statement and objections. So we would further object that despite your council's specific instruction during our last hearing that staff was to provide LLXP with the documents and information supporting the purported revocations so LLXP could prepare its response on the merits, the city staff has to date, and this includes the city attorney, failed to comply with your council's instructions. On May 14th, 2020, City Attorney Epperson provided a letter referencing 4 general allegations of misconduct and a copy of a January 4th, 2019 letter of warning, notice of warning rather, relating to one of the unproven allegations. And so I would like the administrative record to include City Attorney Epperson's May 14th letter, please. So I'd like to incorporate it by reference here. And unfortunately, this letter on behalf of the city failed to clearly identify the specific facts on which the city based its decision to revoke LLXP's permits, pursuant to Hollister Municipal Code sections 5.42, 120, C1, and C3. His letter failed to identify any section of the Municipal Code, Section 5.42, that LLXP allegedly violated, and it failed to explain how LLXP poses a danger to the public under one of those code sections. His letter further failed to provide LLXP the specific documents on which the decision was based. It did just include that, again, one warning notice. That was it. On May 24th, 2021, I spoke with Mr. Epperson by telephone, seeking to obtain more specific information and to obtain all the documents on which the city manager based his decision. Mr. Epperson was unable to provide any more information than that contained in his vague May 14th letter. For example, he was unable to identify any alleged violations of HMC 5.42, and he was unprepared to discuss the merits of any of the allegations contained in his letter. Mr. Epperson admitted that the city had no documents in its possession on which it based the revocations other than the January 19th notice of warning. Mr. Epperson was unable to explain how the allegations previously considered and rejected by the City Council can now serve as grounds for revocation. Those were considered by your council in March of 2018, and they were rejected. Mr. Epperson was similarly unable to explain how mere allegations and hearsay without any adjudicated findings of fact can serve as sufficient grounds for revocation of existing permits and the taking of those valuable property rights without notice and without a hearing. Mr. Epperson was unable to explain how the expiration of a state distribution permit can serve as ground for revocation of all three permits. As your council is aware, the three permits that are to be revoked are the local distribution permit, the cultivation permit, and the manufacturing permit. And the expiration of the state distribution permit held by LXP is one of the grounds put forth in Mr. Epperson's letter for revoking all three of the local permits. Mr. Epperson was also unable to identify any section of HMC 5.42 that LLXP allegedly violated. Perhaps the most troubling fact was that he explained during our conversation that he didn't have 5.42 memorized and that he would need to review the code in order to identify the alleged violations. I then pointed out to him that he shouldn't have to review the code at all to look for violations at this point, because presumably the city manager already did that analysis when he decided to revoke the permits back in March. Thus, he should only need to speak with the city manager to learn the basis of his revocations and report that information to LXP so it could adequately prepare and respond in this matter. Mr. Epperson then became very uncomfortable and abruptly terminated our telephone call. Subsequently, I wrote a letter to Mr. Epperson on May 24th, recounting the facts of this conversation and the type of information we were seeking and the limited information they were providing and the type of information and documents they were failing to provide. And I subsequently received an email from Mr. Epperson essentially disputing in general the facts in my letter and admitting that to the extent that we were requesting, making a government record request, he reported that the city had no additional documents to provide us, essentially admitting that it didn't have any such documents referenced in its letter other than the warning which it provided us. So it doesn't make sense that the city manager would revoke our permits based on documents that the city manager actually does not have. So this raises a number of problems from our perspective with regard to due process, with regard to equal protection, and with regard to the uncertainty concerning the revocation or the recommended revocation. So in addition to the uncertainty with regard to the city's factual and legal contentions, which have so far been withheld from us, LLXP further objects to the city manager reporting to take action on March 4th to revoke LLXP's permits due to unspecified violations of HMC 5.42 and for allegedly posing a danger to the public without notice and without an opportunity to be heard. We note that the resolutions proposed by staff for your council's consideration in your agenda packet today indicate that the staff, quote, performed the necessary investigations, prepared a written report, and recommended revocation. And it continues on, it says, based on available evidence. So from the resolutions prepared by the city staff, it appears that the staff only recommended revocation and that the resolutions they prepared, if adopted today, would actually revoke LLXP's permits. So LLXP requests clarification for the record whether the city contends that on March 4th, 2021, the city manager revoked LLXP's permits as that letter indicated, or whether the city contends that the city manager only recommended revocation and revocation would only happen by your council once it decides. So there's uncertainty with regard to what is even happening procedurally in this matter, and we believe that that violates due process and is improper. Moreover, we object to the fact that the resolution admits that staff performed the necessary investigations, prepared a written report, and reviewed available evidence, but despite our numerous requests for relevant documents and information, not to mention your council's explicit instruction during our last session that staff was to provide LLXP the relevant information, to date, LLXP has not received a copy of this alleged written report or the available evidence. Therefore, LLXP objects that it is now being asked to respond on the merits to this undisclosed information. Following the council's explanation regarding LLXP's permits, we'd really like to know whether the permits have in fact been revoked or whether or not they're simply being considered for revocation today, because it's unclear from the record in this matter. Does the council have a position or a contention in that regard?
Is that the, are you finished with your statement?
I am not. I'm just wondering procedurally whether the permits were revoked by the city manager or whether he simply recommended revocation as indicated by the resolutions.
Again, please finish.
Does the city attorney have?
Yeah, please finish your statement and then we're going to go to public hearing.
What's that?
Please finish your statement, then we will move on to public hearing.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll proceed then. So we object again based on due process, equal protection, and uncertainty as to the factual and legal contentions as well as the actual revocation procedure here. So we object to being required to respond to these allegations without advance notice of the city's specific factual and legal contentions and without production of the evidence on which the city manager based his decision. And we contend that these violate LXP's constitutional rights to a fair hearing, to seek redress of grievances, to due process, and to equal protection, among other rights. The purported administrative decision that LXP received fails to provide any explanation of the basis for the administrative decision. It includes no findings of fact, identifies no evidence in the administrative record supporting the decision, and cites no law supporting the decision. Thus, the administrative decision is unsupported by any substantial evidence and may in fact be based on mistake of fact or misunderstanding of the facts, and we believe constitutes an abuse of discretion and is an arbitrary and capricious administrative decision. The decision cites no legal authority supporting its conclusion that the undisclosed facts in this case constitute violations of the municipal code as alleged, and therefore the decision appears to be clearly erroneous.
Sir, okay.
Also,
is that, I'm hearing really a repeat of what you stated earlier. Are you done with your statement with any other facts or any other points?
No, I appreciate that it may appear that way. What I'm putting on the record now is the fact that the grounds for the allegation that it's an arbitrary and capricious decision, unsupported by the evidence, based on mistake of fact or misunderstanding of fact, all of which constitute an abuse of discretion under the law. So those are elements that were not put before the council previously. and the manner in which the city manager issued its administrative decision without a hearing or notice also believe violates LLXP's constitutional rights.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not completed. Just give me a moment. I'll see if I can skip over some of the stuff that you might feel is repetitive. Okay, so as the council is aware, the letter revoking LLXP's permits cite Municipal Code sections 5.42.120 C1 and C3. These code sections cover an allegation that LXP or its managers have not complied with all the requirements set forth in 5.42. So that means that they violated some section of chapter 5.42, which is not identified anywhere in the letter or in our correspondence to Mr. Epperson, and we're not permitted to obtain that information at today's hearing. Also, the facts and circumstances indicate that a continued operation of the facility will be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the residents of the city. So essentially, this is a danger to the public type argument. And again, we still have no information leading to that conclusion. Turning to Mr. Epperson's letter, Mr. Epperson identified 5 alleged events that he contends give rise to a pattern of misconduct. And the first that he identifies is a 2016 Santa Cruz Sheriff Office report of an alleged illegal grow, and they cite that as case 16-5060. Secondly, Mr. Epperson cites a 2017 alleged illegal Piscinus grow. Those two issues were specifically examined by your city council back in March of 2018. So we contend, and they were rejected, and the recommendation for revocation was overruled by your council then. So we contend that these issues were previously adjudicated by the city council at that time and determined to be without merit. As a result, you overruled the staff's permit revocation recommendation. So LXP hereby requests that the city take judicial or administrative notice of its prior records in these matters, and we hereby incorporate by reference such records into the administrative record in the present matter. Such records would include, without limitation, LXP's written response dated March 19, 2018, with exhibits of approximately 336 pages, as well as all other documents, evidence, and testimony in the administrative record in those two matters. The records should also include your council's own deliberations in that matter at that time, and your council's vote to overrule staff's recommended revocation recommendation. Accordingly, LXP contends that these allegations should be barred from forming any basis for the presently proposed revocations by the doctrines of res judicata, laches, estoppel, equitable estoppel, uncertainty, waiver, certainly because the city could have appealed that decision, administrative decision back then, but it did not, unconscionability, compliance, and possibly statute of limitations. The third ground Mr. Epperson included in his letter was a December 2018 with a January 2019 notice of warning regarding allegedly smoking cannabis at 1971 Airway Drive. You've indicated to me that I'm not allowed to call any witnesses. I would contend that it is the city's burden to demonstrate the sufficiency of the evidence supporting the decision, and that it would be up to the city manager and law enforcement officials involved in these instances, such as Officer Wells, to put on testimony supporting these allegations, which again is all that supports this revocation decision. Merely allegations. There's no actual evidence, no admissible evidence whatsoever. So we object to the fact that that alleged instance of wrongdoing was never adjudicated in any body. It was resolved with a warning, and there were no findings of fact. There was no finding of any violation of law. So So it's simply a mere allegation. It's not based on any established facts whatsoever. And there's no evidence before your council indicating that the allegations in that warning were even true. So LLXP contends that all of these allegations should be barred from forming any basis for the presently proposed revocations by the doctrines of res judicata, laches, estoppel, equitable estoppel, uncertainty, waiver, unconscionability, compliance, and possibly statute of limitations. With regard to the fourth ground contained in Mr. Epperson's letter, again, we're not being allowed to examine whether any of the legal or factual contentions that the city's putting forth here, and I don't believe that the city has met its burden in terms of demonstrating that this serves as a ground for revoking the permits. But I would like to point out to the council that the license in issue is the state distribution license, which LXP allowed to become inactive because LXP is not currently operating. And as the city staff is well aware, this is largely due to a business dispute where they were prevented from operating by Mr. Asimov and Mr. Shabazz, and that is a subject that's currently pending in San Benito County Court and will be tried in the near future. So those issues should be resolved soon, and if they are resolved in LXP's favor, LXP would intend to pursue its operations, move its state permits back into active status, and attempt to move forward. So it doesn't make sense to us that the city would revoke all three local permits, distribution, manufacturing, and cultivation, just because LXP allowed its state distribution license to expire. The city does issue regulatory permits to applicants that do not have state permits in place, and so it does not follow logically that would be a ground for revocation of these permits in this case. Even if it were a ground to revoke LLXP's local distribution permit, there's no logical connection to support a revocation of the other two permits. Therefore, Mr. Epperson's citation of the expiration of LXP's state distribution license as ground for revoking the cultivation and manufacturing license is clearly pretextual, we contend, and possibly retaliatory and intended to violate LXP's constitutional rights. Finally, with regard to the fifth ground contained in Mr. Epperson's letter, Mr. Epperson alleges that in 2020 there was a code enforcement event at a property, supposedly the same property in Santa Cruz County as the first event that was examined and rejected by your council. Despite the representations by Mr. Epperson, the alleged code enforcement event did not involve any property owned or controlled by LLXP. Second, both Mr. Epperson admits in both his May 14th and June 2nd email correspondence that the city has no documents supporting this allegation. Therefore, it cannot serve as a basis for any revocation. I will report to your council that allegation was resolved informally and there was no finding of any wrongdoing or admission of any liability by the person involved, but it did not involve LXP. And when LXP learned of it, learned of that allegation in an abundance of caution, that shareholder was removed because LXP wanted to make sure that whatever alleged conduct by an individual shareholder would not affect LXP's interests, and it doesn't seem equitable or legal to punish LXP for the alleged private conduct. Again, I want to emphasize alleged private conduct. There's been no proof of any of the allegations, no findings of fact, never been adjudicated, and no admission of any wrongdoing in any forum, anywhere. So for your city council to punish LXP for the alleged private conduct of an individual shareholder does not appear to be legal. You can't punish one entity one person for the conduct of another person. And we would also point out that there is no admissible evidence before the city or your council supporting that allegation. Accordingly, LLXP contends that this allegation should be barred from forming any basis for the presently proposed revocations by the doctrines of res judicata, laches, estoppel, equitable estoppel, uncertainty, waiver, unconscionability, compliance, and possibly the statute of limitations. And therefore, LXP respectfully requests that the City Council overturn the city manager's action and that it find that LXP's permits are not and have not been revoked. And alternatively, we would request that the matter be continued until the city finally provides LXP with the factual and legal contention supporting its decision, as well as the documents that it contends support that decision. That would include the report that is referenced in your council's resolution and the evidence that's referenced in your council's resolution. It's clear that the city admits that it has these documents, but for whatever reason, the city has so far refused to provide LXP with a copy of those documents, despite repeated requests and despite your council's own instructions that they do so. With that, I thank your council for its patience and look forward to your decision.
Thank you, sir. This time I'm going to ask, does the council have any questions at this point before I open to public hearing? If not, we're going to open to public hearing.
Elias Salinas? Elliot, go ahead.
Thank you. Well, that was very well stated, and I wish you would have chosen to discuss this in closed session, because this has opened it up to the fact that the city needs to do a lot of work. And I remember Councilman Burns asking that the applicant or the appellant here receive the documentation that was being used to make this decision. There's a lack of due process here, and you have two options. You can go back and have them extend this and come back with another date so that there could be more talking and negotiations and production of documents. Or you make a decision today that nobody approved this request to get their permits taken away. They're not even operational. They haven't been operational because there's a lawsuit. And to bring up the fact about what happened in 2018, that's what you're trying to do. And Mayor Velasquez, you were there, you were behind closed doors, and you came out to open session when they were given their permits. There were other companies that happened, the same thing happened, and they were settled and they got their permits. Municipal Code Section 542 is the ordinance that allows people to apply, and what the process is. Within 542, there are no regulations. I keep saying this, and the city attorney, you have a duty to protect the city's liability from doing things like that. I'm embarrassed right now for the actions that the city has done to this company, and I really, really strongly recommend that you either drop this today, or you come back with another date and they get all the work that they're supposed to get so they can get due process. Because if you fail to have due process, the city is in for major, major lawsuits. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
I have no other speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, we will close public hearing. Is there any questions from council? Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear a presentation from our police department, I believe Officer Wells, with specific focus, probably mostly in my mind, on any violations of the Hollister Municipal Code. I did hear their attorney reference some suggestion that maybe somebody was caught smoking cannabis on one of their sites, and I'd like to know more about that, please, sir.
Thank you. Officer Wells with the Hollister Police Department. As part of my duties as the cannabis safety officer, I go out and randomly inspect or visit with the different cannabis facilities. And on December 26, 2018, I did just one of those. I went out to LLXP's property, and as I was driving in, I saw 3 individuals standing between a couple of their buildings. Got out of my car, immediately recognized it as owners Joseph and Nicholas Maxwell and one of their employees. And I'm going to apologize for slaughtering his name, Mick Corona, I believe is how it's pronounced. And they were smoking cannabis there on the licensed facility's property. Part of the Hollister Municipal Code section 5.42.200 subsection D states in part, any consumption of cannabis or cannabis properties on or about the cannabis facility or in the parking area of the facility is strictly prohibited. Section 5.42.250, all cannabis facilities shall fully comply with any state law or regulation along with all applicable Hollister Municipal Code sections and any specific additional operating procedures and or measures that are imposed as conditions of permitting or approval. So as part of this action, I did write up and issue a notice of warning. That notice of warning is dated January 4th, 2019, and it was served to Nicholas Maxwell. I have the original copy here, or original here, and a copy was given to them at that time.
Thank you, Officer Wells. One of the comments that the business owner's attorney made reference to was how this could possibly be a threat to public safety or welfare. And I'm wondering if you can express your concerns as a law enforcement officer and how that might relate to the attorney's comment.
So our concern is that there's been repeated violation of laws, not just with our municipal code here, but also the city attorney referenced the hearing in 2018, at which time we brought up other concerns regarding illegal cannabis grows in Santa Cruz County and down in Piscinas in our own county here. And then after giving notice of this warning, where it's very clearly stated that you are hereby given this notice of warning to immediately stop any activities, any illegal activities, and have no further violations of the Hollister Municipal Code. Any further violations of your security requirements or violations of law or the Hollister Municipal Code will result in immediate enforcement action being taken in compliance with Hollister Municipal Code 5.42. So we've had these prior violations of laws with the illegal cannabis grows in Santa Cruz and here in San Bernardino County. We had the illegal or the smoking of the cannabis on their facility in violation of the municipal code. And then we were also notified by the Santa Cruz Sheriff's Office that there's been a follow-up illegal cannabis grow that occurred on one of the Maxwell's properties over in Santa Cruz County again. And as the attorney stated, no criminal action was taken on that. That was actually resolved through a civil penalty in lieu of criminal action being taken. So it's a history and ongoing of repeated acts.
Thank you, Officer Wells. I guess my final question would be, were the business owners I guess the business owners, were they aware of the fact that these type of events could ultimately lead to the revocation of their business if they were found to be in violation of those things that you've now mentioned?
I would say that it's very clearly stated in the notice of warning.
Thank you, Officer. Those are the questions I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I do have one quick question. The civil penalty that they agreed to in Santa Cruz County, did they admit to wrongdoing?
I am not, I don't know what happened with that civil penalty. I wasn't there for the hearings or any of the agreements for that, so I don't know what happened.
But they did
that.
agree to pay a penalty.
My understanding is, but I don't have paperwork for that. I just have for the criminal side.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions from council? Vice Mayor Resendez?
Aside from what happened in Santa Cruz and Piscinas, if it were just to be smoking cannabis, would that be grounds for revocation?
By letter of the law, yes. By letter of
Okay.
the law, yes.
Thank you.
The other grow, one more question for you, sorry. The other grow activity in the county, is that recent activity or?
Which grow, Mayor?
There was an Piscinus, sorry, thank you.
Piscinus was back in 20, let me pull that up here,
Sure.
I'm sorry.
2017, I believe, Officer Wells.
Yes, thank you, yes, that was in 2017.
Thank you, sir. That's all the questions I have. See no other questions? Is there a motion from council?
Mayor Velazquez, Tim Burns. I'm going to support staff's recommendation to uphold the city manager's revocation of the permit.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. We will now move to item E2.
Good evening again, council. This is Maria again, Cannabis Affairs Manager with the City of Hollister. This item is for also the revocation of one of additional license for LLXP. This is for the cultivation regulatory permit number 2017-224, 1971 Airway Drive. Staff is recommending that the City Council hear the appellant's statement and motion to either overturn or uphold the city manager's action to revoke cannabis regulatory permit that was previously issued to Nicholas and Joseph Maxwell and LLXP Corporation.
Thank you. Any questions from council? The representative, Mr. Morales?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir.
So, first of all, I'd like to incorporate by reference the objections and comments that I made previously. And I'd also like to voice an objection to the fact that we're not being allowed to examine Officer Wells to test the veracity and the accuracy of his testimony. Officer Wells represented to your council that he observed 3 individuals smoking cannabis. Normally, I would examine him. Would your council allow me to ask him questions regarding his observations?
No, sir.
Okay, so he did not cite any evidence that what, where he was, how he observed it. My understanding is he did not physically observe anything. That he claimed that he smelled something, and there was no testing of whatever it was that they had. There was no checking to see if they had anything on them. There was just a warning issued, and if that issue were adjudicated or an issue was made of it back then, apart from simply a notice of warning, and as the department presented to your council during our last hearing, there is a progressive set of disciplinary action that the police department can or may take, and that includes a warning and then actually recommending revocation. He did not state at the prior hearing that it includes a warning and a revocation for the same conduct. So it would appear to me that even if the allegation were true and Officer Wells has been sufficiently vague to indicate that it's unclear what he observed, where he was, whether there was actually any verification that the allegation was true. And in terms of this being a facility, I would like to point out to the council the fact that these are essentially empty buildings. There is no facility, there are no operations. There were some permits in place locally. There weren't state permits in place. So even if Officer Wells could demonstrate that his allegations were truthful, it seems contrary to the spirit of the law that such an allegation would support a violation in and around empty buildings. So it seems highly inequitable for that to serve as a ground. There's nothing specific in the notice of warning to answer your council's prior question. In the notice of warning that the type of allegations contained in Mr. Epperson's letter could result in a revocation of the existing permits. For example, the alleged illegal grow in 2020. Officer Wells admitted himself that he has not even seen the relevant documents. All he's saying is that he saw some sort of report from law enforcement that there was an allegation to that effect. That's not evidence. It's not admissible evidence in any court. It's hearsay. And the reason it's hearsay is because normally when you adjudicate these allegations and contentions, you're given an opportunity to ask the witnesses questions to test whether what they saw was actually what they saw, or that whether the conclusions that they are drawing are accurate conclusions. So I believe that same argument applies to this alleged warning for allegedly smoking cannabis back in 2018, 3 years ago. It seems inequitable to bring up something that was addressed back 3 years ago, and well, actually two years ago now, 4 years ago, or 2.5, and to bring that up as a ground for revocation now. That's res judicata. It's an issue that's already been addressed, and now it's almost like double jeopardy that they're being punished again for the same conduct when that conduct was never even adjudicated or proven. And with regard to this illegal grow, he admitted that he doesn't have any paperwork shown with regard to what penalties, if any penalties, were assessed. And I will report to your council that in fact there was no admission of any wrongdoing, there was no finding of fact, and that matter was resolved informally through a settlement, not through a penalty, but through a settlement. And the reason it was resolved by settlement is because the cost of the settlement was less than the cost of litigating that and winning. And I believe that the party would have actually won had they gone to an administrative hearing in that matter. It's just the expense of going through the administrative hearing and the expense of pursuing a petition for writ of mandate was more than the settlement amount. And since there was no admission of wrongdoing, no criminal conduct, there wasn't even any kind of misdemeanor found, no criminal referral, there was no reason for that party to litigate that matter. And so for your council to take Officer Wells' representation that there was some sort of illegal conduct when there has been no such finding of fact, there's only been an allegation of a code violation. And that's a civil matter. That's not even a criminal matter, that they violated a code enforcement regulation. So it just seems inappropriate to base the violations and the revocations on those unsubstantiated allegations. And this explains why the city has been unable to produce to us any evidence supporting its decision, because the police department doesn't have any evidence. It's simply the officer's allegation that these things are true, just like the officer made similar allegations, actually made the same allegations back in 2017 with regard to the Piscinus issue and with regard to the other alleged violation that your council already considered. And back then what happened was there was a legal grow. There was a legal grow that was fully papered, that they had all the necessary legal requirements, and your council examined that. And what happened was, yes, law enforcement went there. They declined to look at the paperwork, and once they looked at the paperwork, the entire matter was dismissed because it was not well taken. And those are the issues that your council examined back in 2018 and found that the allegations of the police department were not well taken. With regard to Piscinus, this permittee followed your council's own regulatory structure and rules with regard to grows in this county. And you had a process in place back then where you were considering whether or not you were going to allow these sorts of grows, provided that people came forward and went through the permitting process and tried to legalize everything, which this permittee did. And then your council decided that it was in fact not going to allow anything, and they provided a limited amount of time for the parties to wind up their activities. And this permittee fully complied with all of the laws and regs that were required. And that issue was examined back in 2018. And so for it to be brought up now as a serious, grounds for concluding that there's a pattern of wrongdoing is completely off base and misleading. And to bring up the exact same issues that have already been examined and to take the officer's word for it when your council did not take the officer's word for it with regard to those two matters 2 years ago. So it seems inappropriate for the council to take their word for it with regard to those. Those matters have already been adjudicated and found to not be well taken. So we object to a revocation at all based on the grounds that are set forth in Mr. Epperson's letter. And we object to the fact that the written report that the city admits that it prepared is intentionally withheld from us. So we could not examine the actual facts that are supporting this, and we're not being allowed to examine any of the witnesses that are supposedly providing the evidence supporting this decision.
Thank you, Mr. Morales.
Thank you for your pick.
Thank you, sir. Okay, at this time, is there any questions from council? This time we will open public hearing. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
This time we will close public hearing. Any questions from council?
Mayor Velasquez, Tim Burns.
Councilmember Burns, go
Thank
ahead,
you.
sir.
From Mr. Epperson, the property owner's attorney has alluded to the fact that there are documents that have not been provided to the business owner, even though they've been requested multiple times. Is that a factually accurate statement?
We've provided all the documentation that we possess and that we're able to turn over. And most of it was included with the letter. Now, I realize that, he and I had a difference of opinion on this matter when we spoke, but we provided what we were able to provide. And I realize that they would like more, but it is what it is. We can provide so much, and that's what we did.
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 2021-97.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will now move to item E3.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is Maria again, Cannabis Affairs Manager with the City of Hollister. This is one of the last items for LLXP. It's a resolution of the City of Hollister revoking the previously approved cannabis distribution regulatory permit number 2018-166 for LLXP Corporation located at 1971 Airway Drive. Tonight, staff is recommending that the City Council hold a public hearing, hear the appellant's statement, and motion to either overturn or uphold the city manager's action to revoke the cannabis regulatory permit that was issued to Joseph and Nicholas Maxwell and LLXP Corporation, owners of LLXP Corporation. I'm here again to answer any questions, and so is Officer Wells. Thank you.
Thank you. This time, is there any questions from council?
Mayor Velasquez, Tim Burns.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Mendez, with regard to a cannabis distribution permit, if they no longer have the authority to operate under the other two permits, if we were to not revoke this, would they then be allowed to distribute cannabis that they would acquire from some other entity with an active permit?
So if the business violates, or if there's a code violation, they cannot hold any other license, but they can hold an additional license if if there's an absence of a code violation. In this case, if the code violations for the 2 other licenses are upheld, then the answer would be no.
So then, is there, if I understood you correctly, then is there even really a need to revoke this permit if council has already found that there was cause to revoke the other 2 permits?
Yes, because it's an individual permit, and I understand that the permit it's expired at state level. However, I would like to ensure that once we've revoked the licenses, I have a resolution that I could still submit to the state. Based on my experience in the process, the state requires a resolution from the city stating that we've revoked their licenses and that all appeal options have been exhausted.
Thank you.
Does that conclude your questions? Any other questions from council? No? The representative, Mr. Morales?
Thank you very much, council and mayor. I would like to incorporate by reference my prior comments, and I would like to point out to your council that Mr. Epperson did not directly respond to your question with regard to providing us all of the documents. As I indicated, the resolutions prepared by staff explicitly state that staff conducted investigations and prepared a written report. That written report has not been provided to us. What Mr. Epperson stated was that the city provided us all the documents that it has, which I believe. I believe that what the city has is the notice of warning from January of 2019 that Mr. Epperson provided us. And I believe that Mr. Wells was truthful when he said that he doesn't have any documents, and it appears that the city does not have any documents on which it based its decision. So the resolutions placed before your council stating that they relied on available evidence, it appears that the only available evidence is that 2019 notice of warning, and there's no other evidence before your council or in the administrative record supporting this decision. So we believe that gives rise to our objections and provides an avenue for appeal. And I would like to point out the fact that in terms of providing notice to the state, we are going to have an appeal right with regard to a petition for writ of mandate for an arbitrary and capricious decision, not supported by the evidence in the administrative record or based on a mistake of fact or misunderstanding of the facts. And so until our appeal right expires, I would like to point out that staff cannot so notify the state. So with that additional information, our objections remain in place. We renew them, incorporate them by reference. We would ask your council to please review the over 300 pages that it reviewed last time when it considered the first and second alleged violations raised by Mr. Epperson, and those are the ones that your council examined back in 2018 and found to not have merit. So with that, I thank your council for its consideration and its patience in allowing me to present our objections.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council? This time we will open public hearing.
Elias Salinas? Elliot, go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize. My internet dropped off and I just got back on. So, I'm not going to speak on the others, but what I am going to say is that Officer Wells is an officer of the court, and he must choose his words wisely. The previous Santa Cruz incident and the Piscinas incident were taken care of in 2018 in the appeal process that Mayor Ignacio Velasquez was present. The citation that was issued in 2019 says, if I remember correctly, that any violations from forward, what he did is he went back and he's using an incident that happened in the past that was already taken care of. I have a question with regards to the evidence that he has with, there is no difference between the odor of smoking cannabis and smoking hemp. I don't know if any of you on the stand, are there at the dais, know that, but there is not a difference between the odor of cannabis and hemp being smoked. Therefore, Officer Wells may have confused, and he is the cannabis officer. Did he, and all officers I am aware of, carry test kits? Did he take a THC test of what he claims was being smoked, was cannabis being smoked? There, if that is there, then you have your evidence that the Maxwell's violated, but they were given a warning, and a warning does not constitute taking your permits taken away. Now what's happening is you want to take the permits away because Officer Wells is going back in time and trying to use something that was already previously taken care of through due process. The Maxwell's currently, Joey Maxwell currently is requesting that you follow the guidelines that they're allowed and due process. The city has failed to due process, and I do not wish for the city to be placed in liability. So I hope that you choose wisely what's going to happen going forward. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, we will close public hearing. Bring it back to council. Is there any questions from council? Is there a motion?
I'll move that we adopt resolution number 2021-98.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Motion
Aye.
carries 4-0. Thank you very much. We're going to now move to item F1.
Thank you, Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to bring this item forward after a very transparent process that included having to extend our due date for the applicants so that we had a pool to choose from. Having had two different panels, a public panel and a expert panel, that I bring, and also to thank our interim chief for all the patience that he's went through. It was well proven that we've always had a very good interim chief, and it's my pleasure to bring my recommendation for police chief as Carlos Reynoso, and that I ask staff to approve his contract.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions or comments from council?
Mayor Velasquez, Tim Burns.
Councilmember Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. I wholeheartedly support the city manager's recommendation. I would like to ask that we could have a follow-up conversation in closed session about the compensation package versus in public comment, unless the city attorney advises that now would be the place and the time.
Councilmember Burns, I would say that now is not the place and time.
Thank you. So, but I wholeheartedly support it, and I'd ask
Yeah.
council to support my request to bring this to closed session to talk more about compensation at the next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Resendez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with, I couldn't have said it better than the city manager, and I will definitely support your request, Councilmember Burns. I think the city of Hollister is lucky to have Chief Reynoso as our chief. He's been proven to be a good interim. We, as the city manager has stated, we had a very fair, open, transparent process that involved the public. And he's proven, he's homegrown. He's from Hollister. We're very lucky and very fortunate to have him. So if this gets approved tonight, congratulations to you, Chief, and thank you for your service.
Yeah, I'd like to, San Bernardino County, Hollister specifically, doesn't only just grow good fruit, we grow good police chiefs. And I support that also, Tim.
Thank you. City Manager, I want to thank you. This was a long process through COVID, and I know there was many obstacles that you had to go through, we all had to go through to get to this day. And I know it was probably hard on Chief Reynoso to have to go through that. But I do want to say thank you for putting together a very transparent, very fair search for a new chief of police, which resulted in our own resident, longtime person that grew up here, Mr. Reynoso, and I'm just happy to see that process was open and fair, and the right person was chosen for the position. So thank you very much for that. This time we'll go to any public comment.
Carol Lenore?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's nice to see you there in the chambers. Really, tonight I just logged in to throw my support for Interim Chief Reynoso. Well, he was always my pick after Chief Westrick, you know, and I'll tell you why. I was very impressed when they were both competing for the job back when they were trying to be the police chief. And the council, they had a tough decision, but they did pick Dave Westrick. But I got to tell you, Carlos, if you're listening, I was always impressed with your class and the way you handled that. And what a team player you were with Dave. That was very impressive. But not only that, you're very well experienced for this position, and you'll bring that much needed diversity that we need in our community. And you can speak both languages, so that's a plus. So I just wanted to say to the council that I think sounds like you're going to make a good decision, and I don't think you can go wrong with Carlos Reynoso. Good luck, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elias Salinas?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. And I'd like to congratulate Chief Reynoso, Carlos Reynoso. It is a long time coming. I believe that Carlos would be the third Mexican-American from Richard Vasquez, Camareno Sanchez, and now Carlos Reynoso. And it gives me great pleasure to know that he's a homegrown person. He knows the community knows him well, and he well represents the Latino community because we are a large minority in the area, and nos da orgullo, nos da confianza, y nos da la oportunidad for local people to know that you can grow up and you can come back and or you can be successful in the town you grew up in. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and again, congratulations, Carlos.
I have no more speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, real quick, both speakers actually brought up a very key point. Our expert panel, the other chiefs wanted to also let me know that there's only a handful of police chiefs within California that are bilingual, and that we would be one of those lucky few that have a bilingual chief. So I definitely want to bring that up.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
I'm just wondering, when the time's appropriate, how would we make the request for adopting resolution and also honoring Councilmember Mr. Burns' request?
Councilmember Resendez, I would suggest that direction's been given to staff, and so the council should just simply move one way or the other on the matter that's presented on the agenda, and we'll consider the rest to be direction to staff.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Congratulations, Chief Reynoso. Very well deserved. And if you want to say a few words, sir, feel free to.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the process, City Manager Brett Miller, and the council. I know it's been a hard year, and there's a lot that we had to deal with 2020, with COVID, with some movement around elections and all that. So I'm just here to serve. I'm really grateful for the department that we have, the people that work for us. They're what makes this department so great. And it's an honor to have this position and this opportunity to continue to serve my community where I grew up. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. We are now going to move to item F2.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to have the council review the 2020 Hollister Urban Area Urban Water Management Plan. Staff recommends that the City Council review the draft update, receive the 2020 Hollister Urban Water Management Plan, receive the presentation, actually it will be from Todd Underwater, sorry.
I think it's
Groundwater.
Maureen that's on, Maureen Riley.
Okay, and listen to their presentation.
Maureen, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can.
go ahead.
I'm also joined tonight by my colleague Arden Wells, so she'll be presenting later on in the presentation, if you could unmute her as well. And I see in the presentation. Hi, I'm Maureen Riley with Todd Groundwater, and as I was introduced, we are presenting the Hollister Urban Water Management Plan. It's a mouthful. This is a regional plan with San Benito County Water District, the City of Hollister, and Sunny Slope County Water District. Next slide, please. Tonight, I'm going to go over the state water code requirements, why we do an urban water management plan, a little bit of what's included in the report, next steps for adoption, and where it goes from here. And then I'll open it up to questions about the urban water management plan. The next slide will tell us about the state water code requirements. This is a California state requirement that every 5 years, retailers in California have to supply a urban water management plan to the Department of Water Resources. This includes the City of Hollister. If you could go to the next slide. Perfect. It's a 20-year planning horizon, so you have to look at the demand expected and the supply expected over the next 20 years. There are certain requirements, like over the last 10 years, each retailer has been mandated to reduce their water demand by 20%. Good news, Hollister and Sunny Slope met that with no problem. We update it every 5 years. Todd Groundwater has been working with the Hollister urban area since 2005, and it's updated every 5 years. The prescribed content and tables is very specific. There are tables required that we fill out, and so you'll see it's a pretty thick report. Most of that is prescribed. And it's required for state grants and loans. If you don't have an urban water management plan, you cannot get some of these grants. And this is especially important for SGMA. The San Benito County Water District has received a lot of grants in coordination with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And so this has been a key part of the whole process. And as itself, it's a planning tool for water supply and demand. We look at what's expected and the reliability of water in normal and dry times. Next slide. Thank you. Here's the report. You'll see that we have 2 volumes. One's the appendices, which is 400 pages, and the other main report is a standalone report with 200 pages. It's, again, very prescribed with a lot of detail, prescribed tables about expected demand, supply. So in the urban water management plan, we cover these sections of the introduction, plan preparation, the system descriptions, where the service areas of both the City of Hollister and Sunny Slope are, water use characteristics, where is the water demand being used, where we expect it to be used in the future, baseline and targets, that's related to the mandated 20% reduction, the water supply characterization, where you get the water from, where you will get your water from, how reliable is that supply, and especially during droughts, like our upcoming year is expected to be extremely dry. We have a water shortage contingency plan, that what happens if water shortage is reduced, what then? And Arden will go into that a little bit later in the presentation. And then demand management measures. What water conservation do you do at all times to really make sure you're using your water the most efficient as possible? Water system, the Hollister urban area is made up of, again, the County Water District, the City of Hollister, and Sunny Slope. The city is shown in the blue outline, Sunny Slope's in the pink. The current water demand and supply is reported as individuals. We report Hollister and Sunny Slope separately. But when we look at the future, we report as a region because it's really a good collaborative effort between these three agencies that have worked hard to bring in reliable water supply and will continue into the future. Water demand, like I said, we look at the individual service areas, and we met that 20% by 2020. It's measured in gallons per capita per day. The city of Hollister had a target of 119 gallons per capita per day, and actual in 2020 was 114, so we made it with no problem. Sunny Slope also had no trouble with the target. That was 135, and they met it with 119 under current conditions. Part of the reason why the water demand mandate was met, because water demand has decreased over time, where population has stayed the same or increased. If you look on the chart here, it shows the different sectors of water demand. That blue bar is the single family residential, which is the biggest user of water. And you can see from 2004 to 2014, water use has decreased, in a large part due to the public outreach and the water conservation that was done through the last drought, the most recent drought. And even as population is increasing, we see demand increasing slightly, but the area has done a great job with water conservation, and we think that will continue into the future. For water supply, there's three major sources of water supply. There's CVP, Central Valley Project, imported water, and that is treated by the water treatment systems. So we have LaSalle and West Hills plants. It's great water quality, but it is heavily reduced during drought, including this coming year. We have groundwater, which is a great reserve during drought, but is lower water quality, and it needs to be blended with CVP to achieve goals. Finally, we have recycled water that is very drought resistant. We have the same amount year over year, but there's limited uses, and it's been prioritized for agricultural use, so it is being used, but just not on the municipal side. And all three of these combined help create a portfolio of supplies to help weather droughts. Here's another chart showing the water supply. You can see in 1996, the first year, the bars are blue, which means that its groundwater was 100% of municipal supply. And then over time, the salt treatment plant came online. You'll see the gray bars added. You see a little bit of the recycled water, purple, gets added in 2010. And now in the 2020, we have the orange treated water from the West Hills plant, the gray treated water from the LaSalle plant, and then the blue bars on the bottom. So there's really been a transition from a completely groundwater system to a groundwater imported water system that can be adjusted based on water year type. And now I'm going to hand it over to Arden to talk about the water shortage contingency plan.
Hello, I'm Arden with Todd Groundwater. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to share a bit about the water shortage contingency plan. And this is a required part of the urban water management plan, which was developed in the last urban water management plan. And it outlines different stages of water shortage where we'll aim to reduce the demand by a certain percent and different shortage response actions for each stage. And we tried to keep as much as possible of the existing plan. We didn't add any new restrictions and we didn't change the order of them in any way, but we did meet new state requirements. So the first big requirement is that all of the water shortage contingency plans throughout the state need to now have 6 levels and the same 6 levels. So previously we had 4 different levels for our water shortage contingency plans. And that's the table on the left, where the first one was entirely voluntary actions with the goal of reducing demand by up to 15%. And then the second one had some mandatory actions for up to 25, next one up to 35, and the fourth was for 50 or above demand reduction. The new requirement is that there's 6 stages that are reducing demand by up to 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50%. And then The sixth one is for greater than 50%. And the state recommended that if we have an existing water shortage contingency plan that's working, we can create this sort of crosswalk to directly translate our existing stages to the new ones. So that's what's shown below. So for example, the first stage, which is all voluntary actions, originally this was stage 1 to reduce demand by up to 15%. And now it's also stage 1, but the goal is to reduce demand by up to 10%. The previous stage 2 had the goal of reducing water demand by up to 25%. And an example of one of the shortage response actions is that in this case, landscape irrigation is limited to 3 times a week. And so now this is applicable for both stage 2, reducing demand by up to 20%, and also stage 3, reducing demand by up to 30%. So all of the requirements, such as restrictions or different actions to reduce demand, are the same in stages 2 and 3. But as we increase the amount we want to cut back by, maybe there will be more communication or stricter enforcement of the new shortage response actions. And similarly, the old stage 3 actions are now stage 4 and 5. And then the previous stage 4, cutting back by over 50% if things get really bad, is the same as the stage 6. Next. Another new requirement is that there must be an annual water supply and demand assessment submitted. And this is where once a year, the agencies look at the previous year's supply and demand and also make projections for the next year in order to determine if there's going to be a water shortage contingency plan put in place. For example, if there's a multi-year drought going on, it's likely that it will need to be put in place. And a lot of the findings from this report will be the same questions that will be answered in the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act annual report. So we concluded that it makes the most sense to do this in conjunction with that report. Another new addition this year is that we were required to calculate how effective each particular response actions are. So for example, how much water do we expect will be saved by reducing the number of days that people are allowed to water their lawns? And we calculated this by first looking at how much was Hollister able to cut back in the last drought and what mandatory restrictions were in place. And then also looking at case studies of various cities and how demand was reduced when they put various restrictions in place. And then calculating scaled to the population, how much water might be saved by each action. And none of these calculations are exact because human behavior is pretty challenging to predict, but we were able to get a sense that the existing plan updated to the new stages is feasible, and the amount of water saved by implementing the response actions in conjunction with education and communication will be sufficient to reach the water demand savings goals. Next. The water shortage contingency plan also looked at ways that the supply can be temporarily augmented. The Central Valley Project imported water is going to be the limiting resource in times of a drought. And that's the high quality water. And so if we slightly increase the ratio of groundwater to the Central Valley Project water and blending, we can augment the water supply by a bit in times of an emergency. Additionally, the shortage contingency plan outlines specific communication protocols for each stage. So y'all will be able to look at those and know who you need to contact to get the word out about entering new stages. And then finally, I just want to emphasize that we kept as much as possible the same and just met the new requirements for the state. So there are no new response actions. There are no new restrictions that are put in place. The compliance and enforcement policies were left the same, as were monitoring, reporting, refinement, and the legal authorities. Next. And there were a few main findings in the urban water management plan that are important to keep in mind as far as keeping the supply reliable in the long term. First, the technique of blending the groundwater with the imported water is really important in order to meet the water quality goals for the delivered water. And we want to maximize our use of the CVP water and also have a supply in the reservoir for times of extreme drought. The current water conservation programs that we have in place have been working, and more water can be saved by also reducing system water losses. For example, fixing leaks can save a lot of water. And then finally, a big priority was to prioritize health and safety over irrigation during times of drought. So making sure that there's clean and safe water that's delivered to everyone.
Yeah, as Arden mentioned, our best indication of how the future will be is what we've seen in the past. And thanks to the water reduction that happened over the last drought, we're confident that the water supply will be sufficient moving forward, even in times of drought. The next steps, we've already presented and the Urban Water Management Plan has been adopted by the San Benito County Water District Board on May 26th. Tonight, we're hoping you'll adopt the plan, and then our next public hearing is to Sunny Slope next week. After the adoption, what we have to do is submit both the data and the report to DWR. A final report will be available from the California State Library. The data will be uploaded to specific tables on the water use efficiency portal through DWR, and the PDF will be submitted electronically, so it will be publicly available and reviewed by DWR. That's all we have. So if you have any questions, both Arden and I are here to answer or discuss any topics.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions from council? Councilmember Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I think my question is more for the city manager. City manager, having heard this report, how do we take their findings and recommendations and communicate those to our community? I'm encouraged by the fact that it doesn't sound like there's going to be any mandatory water rationing or it seems as though we're looking for voluntary compliance, but how do we get this message out? I understand that we as a council, you as city manager, have heard the message, and it's pretty clear to me, but how do we move this forward, please?
Correct. Our lead agency is the San Benito County Water District, and they will actually probably have some information coming out really soon in the next week or so. They are working with our billing department to get some messages out with our utility bills and plus with Sunny Slopes also. So they're the ones that lead the message, and then we help facilitate and get that message out there.
Thank you.
That's right. The three agencies formed together to be the Water Resources Association, and they're on top of it. I know Sean is working on the voluntary measures right now. It's the beginning stages of the water shortage contingency plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Going back to your question, the last time we went through this, they did a great job getting the word out in our community, and our community really responded in a very positive, proactive way. So it was really impressive to see that happening. The better job we do now, the less likely we're going to be hit in the following years, because the problem with these droughts, we never know if it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Each year it's getting worse and worse. So I thank you for your presentation. I would also recommend maybe in September sometime if we could set up a study session and hopefully take the council members to go see the whole project from the reservoir in San Luis through each plant, understand the system, because it's really impressive what's out there, and it's more importantly, it's important for all of us to really know this is one of the major infrastructure deals we have in our community, and it really helps us educate the public, because a lot of times I'll get questions from the public that are just not correct. And when they understand how big of a project this all is,
Correct.
I think they're amazed that we actually get water out of our tap that is really, now with the project we just did at West Hills, really good, much better water. So I would recommend if we can do something like that, that'd be helpful for the council and for the public. So I appreciate your presentation today, and I'm sure the public does too. Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
I just have one.
Go ahead, sir.
So earlier in the presentation, which I thought was really awesome, you were doing a gallons per day rate for the city of Hollister was 119, and that was the goal, and we're actually reaching 114. And Sunny Slope was 135, and they're reaching 119. What is the difference of the 16 gallons per person a day?
Why does Sunny Slope use more water? Is
Yeah.
that the question? They have bigger yards is basically the answer. The number one water use is single family homes, and about half of that is used outside. So I think it's just the lot size is one of the indications. There's also additional golf courses and other water uses. But the 20% by 2020 was based on existing use and reducing from that. So just Sunny Slope does use a little bit more water than Hollister. They are coming closer together as water conservation methods are reducing some of the water waste with irrigation.
That's what I noticed too, is like, no matter how much you guys, the goal was, everyone's by conserving, which is great to see the community seeing that it's water is a concern, and they're actually achieving better numbers than we anticipated. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 4-0. It is 8:30. Why don't we take a 5-minute break? We'll come back at 8:36. Brother-in-law come and fix it.
she was gonna run for honors spot.
I heard that one too, so she's going for both. That's just the other day.
So she's gonna be on the board and,
Three.
Good evening, Council. This is Jamila Saka, the Housing Programs Coordinator. This evening is a resolution authorizing the sale of the 0.21 acre city-owned parcel to Chispa Sunrise LP, Chispa's limited partnership, who developed and owned the Sunrise Senior Apartments located at 580 Westside Boulevard. In 2018, the City of Hollister offered to sell the 30-foot parcel to Chispa when Chispa would close on all of the funding for the development of the Senior Sunrise Apartments. At the time, Chispa staff wanted to purchase the 30-foot property, but decided to maintain a land lease until construction completion, and that Chispa had enough cash available at the end of the project. Chispa is now going through the process of completing what is called a placed in service. It's a procedure with the Tax Credit Allocation Committee. And to more easily complete this process, Chispa is now seeking to purchase the property to avoid a complicated and expensive, what is known as a lease rider. And this land lease agreement required by the Tax Credit Allocation Committee, or this would be required, this lease rider would be required because Chispa doesn't currently own that entire piece of the property. With this resolution, Chispa will purchase the land for $28,000, as shown in the attached appraisal report, and the City of Hollister will retain the easement to the current underground utilities. At this time, I don't know if there are any further questions from the City Council. I cannot see if the executive or the Director of Real Estate Development, Dana Cleary, is online with us this evening. But if she is, she's more than welcome to provide any answers as well.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
Only Dana Cleary.
I think we'll save her if there's any questions. I don't see any from...
I have no hands raised.
Well, I do have one question. Just want to make sure we'll still have easement rights.
Correct.
That's why I read through it. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Other than that, okay. Unless Dana wanted to make a comment about something. I want to make sure. Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll now move to item F4.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Henry Gonzalez, interim Public Works Director. I'm here to talk to you guys about resolution number 2021-102 for guidance for a contract with Dilbeck and Sons to install a fire extinguisher system in our MC room at the domestic water treatment plant currently. That's a building that has a lot of electrical panels in there, VFDs in there, potential for fire. So this system would protect the computer system, the brain, if you would, of the whole domestic plant.
Okay, is there any questions from council? I do have a question. I was reading through, I know they're going to move one of the transformers. I believe they're going to be installing shunt trips on the gear to shut off any power within that section if a fire does.
Yes, and that's part of it, yes.
I want to make sure that. And the other part, I don't remember if this is going to be on a different contract, the monitoring of the different buildings with at least the smoke detectors to respond.
Yes, I believe this is part of that project also.
All part of
yes.
it. Awesome.
We went through all the buildings, and I believe that was one of the
Great.
aspects.
I want to make sure we cover all that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? No? Is there a motion?
So moved.
For the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, we're going to move now to item F5.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Mark Felgo. I'm the acting city engineer for the city of Hollister. Here to describe resolution 2021-103, a resolution of the city to accept the bids received to approve a supplemental appropriation award, a contract in the amount of $800,919.40 to Granite Construction Company, and authorize the execution of a contract and change orders for a road rehabilitation program 1920 project CIPC 1902. On April 19, 2021, this project was approved by the City Council and staff was authorized to call for sealed bids. On May 19, 2021, 4 bids were received. The lowest bid was received from Granite Construction Company of Watsonville, California, in the amount of $806,919.40. The other 3 bids ranged from $831,000 to $895,000. Staff is requesting the City Council accept the bids received, award the contract to the lowest responsive bidder, and authorize the mayor to execute the contract with Granite Construction Company, and authorize the city manager to execute contract change orders not exceeding $121,000 for timely completion. So this supplemental appropriation includes a contingency of $121,000 and the contract amount of $806,919.40 for a total appropriation of $927,919.40.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions from council? How soon would this project start if awarded tonight?
It would, as quickly as we could get it going and get them mobilized, so we would have to verify their mobilization time.
Next 3 months would be fair?
Oh, it would start with, I would imagine, within the next 4 weeks.
Oh,
yeah.
Even better.
Yeah,
Take
right.
that. Okay, thank you. Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from council? Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Motion carries. We'll now move to item F6.
Good evening, Mayor Velasquez and council members. Tina Garza, Recreation Supervisor. Before you is resolution number 2021-103 and a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hollister approving the agreement between the City of Hollister, the City of San Juan Bautista, and San Benito Police Activities League for the use of Abbey Ballpark Field. Hollister Recreation Department is entering the 6th season of the Junior Giants baseball softball program, and this is a free program offered to our youth 5 to 14 years old in San Benito County. Recreation staff with the San Benito County Police Activities League coordinates with the City of San Juan Bautista for the use of the ball field, and the residents of San Juan Bautista and Aromas have the opportunity to participate in our Junior Giants program
thus allowing participants to practice and play games in their community. And during the duration of this agreement, the City of Hollister agrees to maintain the park. Staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution approving an agreement between the City of Hollister, the City of San Juan Bautista, and San Benito PAL for the use of the Abbey Ballpark field.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Vice Mayor Resendez?
Quick question. It says Department Head Tina Garza, Recreation Manager, but you said Recreation Supervisor. Are you a supervisor or a manager? I'm just curious.
Depends on the day.
Sorry, it's
I'll
not
leave
related to
that
the
to-
item. Okay, I was just curious because you said Supervisor, but it says Recreation Manager. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards? No speaker cards. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're going to move now to item F7.
Tina Garza, Recreation Supervisor. Before you is item number 2021-104, and this is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hollister establishing and adopt a park, trail, or landscape policy. And this policy is just designed for businesses or groups, nonprofits, or individuals to participate in the maintenance and enhancement of the parks within the City of Hollister. The program can assist city staff with the ongoing beautification process of different amenities in our parks. In addition, the program may provide city staff the opportunity to better prioritize park projects and keep up with the growth demand within our park system. Staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution establishing and adopt a park, trail, or landscape policy.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council?
Mayor Velazquez, Tim Burns.
Go ahead, Mr. Burns.
Thank you. What was our Parks and Rec Commission's position on this? Have they weighed in on this?
Yes, it was presented to them at their May 25th meeting, and they approved the policy and the program. They were thankful that we brought something forward because we've had several organizations, nonprofits, and residents ask about helping out with some parks and beautifying them, and especially the graffiti in the parks.
Great, thank you. I think this is a great idea, and again, it just focuses on what a great community we live in with all the people that want to step up and actually help, and this is a great way to focus that work for a community benefit. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Burns that this is a long time coming. This is a great idea. I would just suggest that we advertise this because I know there's a lot of people that have been wanting to help out in the parks, not just when we approve it, but continuously, like throughout the year, like maybe every 3 months or something, to get people interested and let them know that it's out there so we can get some more involvement in our community. But this is wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have anything, Mr. Perez?
Yeah, so you know how they have the Adopt a Highway type, so basically similar program. Are we gonna be adopting also like the signage also, or is it just like this a park adopted by Tina Garza?
So if an organization comes in, or business or an individual comes in and they would like to adopt a park, there's a process, the application process, and then the city will provide a sign that says this park is adopted by, Councilmember Perez. So there is some signage, and there is a cost that's associated to that. But a park signage, that's different, and that's the next item on the agenda.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I absolutely love this. Love it. I think so many of our residents want to be involved. So many of our companies want to be involved. I'd love to see companies stepping up and really sponsoring an entire park and keeping it maintained to the level they see as far as the quality level. Perfect. And we have a new park opening this weekend. I'm excited about it.
Yes.
We're going to get some volunteers on Wednesday, and this is what community is about. Allowing community to participate, take ownership. Great item you brought forward here. So thank you very much.
Actually, one more thing. The name escapes me right now, the ones that are taking care of the Rose Garden.
Growing Hearts.
Growing Hearts. Perfect example. Perfect
Oh, wait, the
example.
Rose Garden. The Rose Garden at Dunn Park?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who that is.
It's like,
two ladies there.
Yeah,
Okay.
whoever you are, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name right now. You guys have been doing that for a long time, and you're doing a really great job. Those flowers are beautiful, and we just really appreciate you all, everyone that lives around that park. Thank you.
Are they, I can find out, and I'd like to
I can
provide them the
picture their
application.
face, I can see them,
Okay.
but I just can't
All right.
remember the name. Don't get old.
Thank you. Did we have any speaker cards? No speaker cards? Again, thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We're gonna move now to item F8.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Velazquez and council members. Tina Garza, Recreation Supervisor. Before you is Resolution 2021-105, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hollister rescinding Resolution Number 2002-34 and adopting the revised policies and procedures for naming and renaming public parks, recreation facilities, and special features in a park. On February 4th, 2002, the City Council of the City of Hollister adopted Resolution 2002-34. The resolution established a process and criteria for naming and renaming public facilities. Staff's desire to rescind Resolution Number 2002-34 to clarify the criteria and process for naming and renaming public facilities. In addition, we would like to add special features in the park to include benches, playground equipment, or trees in the park. Staff recommends that City Council adopt resolution, rescinding Resolution Number 2002-34 and approve the revised policy for naming and renaming public recreation facilities, parks, and special features in a park.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. We'll now move to item F9.
Thank you.
City Clerk, this is yours.
Thank you. On May 3rd, City Clerk's office reported to City Council that there was a vacancy for Council Member District 3. At that time, direction was given to fill the vacancy by election. This resolution will call for the holding of a special municipal election on Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021, for the election of a Council Member District 3 to fill a vacancy as required by the provisions of the laws of the State of California relating to general law cities.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second? Motion.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. That's a strong second. Okay. We'll now move to item F10.
Thank you. This resolution is a resolution that will request the Board of Supervisors of the County of San Benito to render full services to the city relating to the conduct of a special municipal election to be held on November 2nd, 2021, to fill the vacancy on City Council for District 3.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Thank you.
carries. Now move to item F11.
This last resolution is adopting regulations for candidate statements for elective office pertaining to candidates for elective office pertaining to candidate statements submitted to the voters at city, general, and special municipal elections. We do currently have a resolution, so this would also rescind the old resolution. I think I have that in. No, I don't think it does rescind the old resolution, but this is basically restates a resolution we already have in regards to candidate statements. While candidate statements are limited to how many words you can use, whether you can use bullet points, whether you can use underlining, there are certain things you can and can't use. This just regulates that in accordance with elections code, or is it government code? I believe it is government code. And even though it's the elections code, and even though the payment does go directly to San Benito County, they're the ones that will do the translation. They're the ones that actually provide the candidate statements in the voter's guide. We still need to refresh this resolution every few years or so, and it becomes standing for all future elections.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Mayor Velazquez?
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we actually need to rescind the current existing one as just part of cleanup, or how do we?
It probably would be a bad idea, but I'm not sure if I actually put it in there. Hold on, I think I may have in my whereases. In section 7 of this resolution, I do say all previous resolutions establishing city council policy on content, filing, translation, printing, and payment for candidate statements are deemed to be of no further force or effect.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions from council? Do we have any speaker cards?
I have no speaker cards, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Motion carries. We will now move to item G1, reports from city council members regarding their committees they serve on. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. On Thursday, June 4th, 2021, I attended the Water Resources Association of San Benito County quarterly meeting, and I was made aware that we were going to receive the report tonight, and the conversation was consistent with this evening's comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor Resendez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Thursday, June 4th, I attended the intergovernmental meeting. We discussed homelessness and kitchens. So there was a lot of ideas thrown out there as far as homelessness and how we can better serve the homeless community. I think the county is going to have that discussion further tomorrow. We talked about home kitchens as far as like making cookies and trying to adopt like a formal process for a smaller scale operation. But ultimately, I think it was the consensus of the intergovernmental committee, not to support that because we wanted to, we didn't want to limit anybody from generating revenue. And it seemed like that policy that was the state was asking us to adopt is pretty limiting. We had also discussed upcoming items. There were some concerns as far as the animal shelter that were brought up by the public that would like to be agendized. Campaign finance reform was brought up on the county side, and then landfill. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perez.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Report from COG. We're going to begin the environmental study. We'll be starting soon along Highway 25 from the San Felipe portion to the 156. So that should be going soon. We will be meeting with the director of Caltrans to discuss some of those issues, as Caltrans is in charge of that project. VTA, which is the Transit District for Santa Clara County, will be holding a meeting Wednesday evening, this Wednesday, 6/9, at 6 p.m. The conversation is about the new interchange at the 101-25. Very important conversation. This project is scheduled to move forward in late 23 for the new interchange at that location. So please, if you can get the information from the website at VTA, or here locally at COG. We'll have a link to where you can go to. This is a very important part of this conversation of that new interchange that all of us that drive it daily understand how important this is. So please stay informed and participate if you can with any questions. It is this Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. June 9th at 6 p.m. You can get the link from COG, San Benito Council of Governments, or you can go straight to the VTA site in Santa Clara to get that link. Okay, sir? We will now go ahead and move, yeah. We'll move to item 2, informational reports from city council members. Councilmember Burns.
Thank you, Mayor Velazquez. So first of all, I'd like to take a moment and congratulate our Lady Baylor soccer team on their great success this year. Well done.
Good job.
I'd also like to ask our city manager if you can give me a time frame when the work will start to begin out in Sunny Slope Village in clearing the brush and the painting of the red curbs and just the overall cleanup in those common areas.
I'll get that information out to council tomorrow in an email.
Perfect, thank you.
I see.
Appreciate that.
Henry left, so I would have got that from him.
Okay, thanks. I'd also like to just ask that when it comes time for the final budget approval, one of the things that escaped me, but I wanted to give you some time, Mr. City Manager, was I'd like to have a conversation about how we're going to document and report on the overtime budget for our fire department. I know that it seems historically, or at least in recent history, they've had some, I won't say challenges, but it's been noted that they've gone over budget on multiple occasions on their overtime. And I'm not convinced that maybe they haven't been allocated the appropriate amount. And I know that every year the city still pays it, but I'm wondering if there might not be a better way of addressing that other than it appearing that they're just consistently going over, because my sense is they may not have control of it and there may be other funds that are coming in that may offset that. And I'd just like to have a more public, comprehensive conversation about that.
Yeah, we can do that, or we can also do it as a part of the study session with the, I believe there's going to be an ad hoc committee brought up for fire, and that might be a better appropriate time to discuss that, and we can, from that meeting, adjust their budget from that.
Okay, yeah, whatever works. I just want to, I'd like to get to some consistent point where we see it as it is, and assign actual value to it, not
Correct.
necessarily perceptions that are simply perceptions. So,
Correct, yeah.
all right.
And I think that might be, like I said, going through a ad hoc committee and having a really good, long talk about it.
Okay, that works exceptionally well for me, thank you. I'd also like to ask the council, maybe in August, if we could consider reviewing our city attorney's contract. I know that I have not heard anything since I've been on council, but I would like to at least have some sort of a review of the existing contract. And then I'd also like to suggest maybe to our Parks and Rec director, supervisor, manager, that I don't know if there's a way possible, but I notice that when I walk, and I often walk at least 2 or 3 times a week down Memorial, and I walk past the skate park, and I understand that as I understand it, we're responsible for maintenance, and I don't see graffiti, but I'm one of those guys that when I see 12 different colors of paint on cement, it's not clear as graffiti, but it's clear that there was graffiti. I'm wondering, and I don't know, but if there might be a way to paint some murals in those areas that could, possibly withstand the challenge of future graffiti, and maybe get our kids involved in that process. It might, beautify it and might increase the level of respect there. And so I would just like to suggest maybe to your Culture and Arts Commission that they maybe consider that. And then finally, and I think this might be for our city clerk, but I'm not sure. I know that we just talked about an upcoming campaign where we're going to elect a city council member for a 2-year term. And one of the things that concerned me greatly during my campaign was campaign contributions. And I'm not sure that there's 100% transparency in that. And I would recommend, however we get there, and I don't know the process, that 100% of accurate reporting be required for campaign donations so that people clearly understand where the funding's coming from. Now, I self-funded, so that would have been really easy for me, but I think that there's a great opportunity here to start something new and more efficient and effective and far more transparent. And so I don't know what that process looks like, City Clerk, but I would like to push that out for maybe council consideration and dialogue. And so, Mayor, that would conclude my comments. Thank you, sir.
Vice Mayor Resendez?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got a little bit of a list here, so bear with me if you will. Pre-pandemic, I had requested that we talk about social media a little bit. Paul, I don't know if you remember that conversation. We're in a whole another world now, and this is the new norm. I've had this conversation with the city manager and our mayor. I would like for us to have more of a social media presence. I know that the city of Gilroy, every time they go live, and the county, every time they go live on Facebook, they actually, you'll get a notification, and then their Zoom is on their Facebook. So I was hoping that we can do something like that. I think that maybe even Instagram, if it allows it. I know we do YouTube, but just generally speaking, the more platforms that we have, the better. I think this day and age, information is vital. I also agree with Councilmember Burns. I believe he said if we can get that information about the water. So if we can get digital flyers of any events or anything that's going on in the city to email to all the council members, because then we can post that on our respective social media sites as well, because I believe we all have social media here. And just in this day and age, I think we need to keep the public well informed. And if we can strengthen our social media presence, and I want to say that I think the police department has been doing an excellent job with their social media. I've mentioned that to the city manager, but you guys are doing a fantastic job. And I think that we should probably step up our game and follow their lead. So thank you for that. I'm wondering about the kiddie parade for 4th of July. I didn't see it on the agenda. And I'm just wondering if we're going to be able to do that this year or not.
Tina, why don't you wait for my item? I'll defer.
Okay. So I don't know if we necessarily need to close down the streets. And I don't know if we have in previous years. I think the PD is kind enough to come out there and just lead the children. And I know that my child has done it probably every year. So that's something the community really looks forward to. I think it's important. And if we can, I would really like to see that come to fruition. A couple other things. So I would like to request the Arts and Culture Committee to consider adopting a type of resolution to come up to the City Council to generate some revenue for the arts in our city. And I think that one way we've talked about this is to develop an impact fee. I know that other cities and states do this. Every time there's any type of development, there is either a certain percentage of, let's say, commercial building that should have public art or some type of art element. And if not, then they can pay into an in lieu fee, and that in turn would go to the city. And then we would have a pot of revenue for us to fund local artists to put up some local art around our city and help beautify that. I think this is the last one. So if you haven't heard by now, June is LGBTQ plus Pride Month. First off, I just want to thank all the members of the public for reaching out to me personally and supporting me, and for the folks that came out here to the event for the flag raising ceremony. Thank you to the staff for helping with that. Recreation Department, I know Christine was out there hoisting up that flag as well. So I want to thank you guys for that. Just as a reminder, the city of Hollister, and I've said this time and time again, folks, we were the first people in this area to raise that flag up last year. And if you don't know by now, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, Salinas, Watsonville, San Juan Bautista have all raised pride flags this year. So you should be very proud, the city council and the staff for helping to lead that effort. I feel that LGBTQ pride is probably one of the most important human rights issues of our time that we've seen. The hate is real, the prejudice is real, the bigotry is real. I've experienced it, and I'm sure you guys have seen it on social media as well. I've experienced it my whole life, which is very unfortunate, but everything that I've seen happen gives me so much hope and pride and encouragement that we're gonna pave a way for our youth to have a better and brighter future and not have to experience those same things as well. The mayor might talk about this in his report, but today the high school hoisted up our flag that we had here last year. one of the youth council members reached out to me. She asked me for a flag because they're sold out on Amazon, believe it or not. And I gave her the flag that we hoisted up here last year. They hoisted up a flag this morning. The mayor was present for that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for going to do that. I went to the library to pick up books for my daughter, and they have as soon as you walk in, a whole section of Pride books that educate people on the Stonewall riots and all these other issues. The county of San Benito purchased and put up a huge billboard when you're going outside of Hollister that tells Hollister to be proud as well. And it's very, I would say, historic that there's so much support and so much presence. I've never seen it in my lifetime, let me tell you. And it makes me very proud and very happy to see all of that. So I know that the county is considering the issue as well. They don't have a flag, unfortunately, a flagpole, I should say, but they're considering a proclamation tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to the outcome of that. And I think that's just about wraps up my comments. And I definitely support Councilmember Burns looking into campaign finance as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Perez. No. I have a few comments. I have a long list, but let me start by thanking Vice Mayor Resendez for my beautiful new Pride tie. I will be wearing this tie throughout the month of June at all of our meetings, so you know, it might look like I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to do that on purpose because it's beautiful. The flag outside is beautiful. Councilmember Burns, thank you for the suggestion of the 3 flagpoles out there. And City Manager, thank you for pulling off that miracle of making that happen in time. Just incredibly proud of everyone here that participated, and especially Vice Mayor Resendez for really leading the charge and getting the flags raised, as he mentioned, throughout the Central Coast now. And today, as he mentioned, I was invited to the flag raising ceremony at our high school. And I want to thank the superintendent, principal, and all the students there. Just, you know, when you see the young people and you see how happy they are that they have support, it really, really tells you the story. So I'm proud of my pin, I'm proud of my tie, and I'm proud of that flag out there. So thank you again to everyone. The dog park will be opening Saturday. Come out, beautiful. Rec has been doing a great job. Supervisor Tina, or Manager Tina. I did post something earlier. Unfortunately, right next to our park is a field because the airport needs to keep that land dry. So we get all the little stickers that decided to jump into our new grass, and they're forming out there. I ask everybody, come help us on Wednesday morning if you can at 8 o'clock. Bring your kids. Come help us pull those little stickers out of there before they really make their way throughout all the new grass that was planted out there. And, you know, and it gives you a chance to see what's happening out there. So you're a dog lover, even if you're a cat lover, come out to the dog park. I'm a cat lover. I'm a guinea pig lover. Come out to our park on San Felipe and Fallon, 8 o'clock on Wednesday. Help us get those weeds out of there before they take over our grass. And it's going to be a fun event on Saturday, 10 o'clock. Correct, Dana? So mention that. Campaign finance reform. I'm 100% supportive of Mr. Burns' idea. It was brought up by the county at our last meeting, but I think it's important for us to set that standard. So completely agree with you on that. I think we had the conversation today about cannabis. I think it's time to have that study session about our ordinance and see what we can change. I believe there needs to be changes in that ordinance to really make it more clear and well, let's just say we don't want any more issues coming out of there, so I want to make sure we're working towards it. There was a conversation today about Adopt a Park. Caltrans at one of our COG meetings did say that we could take over maintenance of Pinnacle Park National Highway between Santa Ana all the way to Sunny Slope. We see every year a lot of weeds growing there. It's an area that has a lot of potential. I want to see what we can do as a city. Hopefully we can find a company to help us, but definitely find something to plant along that section so we're not just seeing weeds every year. It has a new meandering sidewalk that goes through there now that Caltrans paid for. And I want the public to understand Airline Highway is a state road. It is their responsibility to maintain that road, not ours. But they did give us permission to maintain along the sound wall. So I think it's a good, important opportunity. I agree with Mr. Burns about the graffiti. If we're gonna paint over graffiti, let's pick a color and stick with it. You're a painter, correct? So it must drive you crazy. all the different shades. So we could do that. That would be helpful. So with that, we can try to find a sponsor. Lastly, fireworks. Folks, several years back, we implemented a fine here in Hollister for those fireworks that go boom or fly. Safe and sane are allowed during the period when they open the booths. If you are caught using an illegal firework, it is a $1,000 fine. Our police department needs help from those of you that have neighbors that continue to do this. Remember, the law is very clear on this. Without a witness, we really can't do very much. But with all of you helping by reporting and willing to sign a complaint, $1,000 sends a clear message pretty quick. And I can tell you each year, many fines are given, and I receive many calls from people saying they didn't know. No, we all know. So please help us. We can put an end to this, and we can have a safe and sane firework or 4th of July weekend. So please help us, folks. The police department needs your help so we can do this right. That is my report for today. City Manager.
I'm going to defer my time to Tina so she can talk about the 4th of July Kitty Parade, hopefully.
Good evening, Mayor Vasquez and City Council. The 4th of July Kitty Parade, as administrative staff, we kind of went back and forth trying to decide if we wanted to offer our 4th of July parade as we have done in the past. And it was decided because we didn't know where the state would be by July 4th, that we would go ahead and cancel the 4th of July Kitty Parade, along with fireworks. Yeah, along with the fireworks show also. So we entertained it for a few, couple of meetings, but it was decided because we didn't know where we would be.
Thank you.
If we can probably just let the public know, because there's been some inquiries about that. I'm very sad, but I completely understand and I support your decision. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get that message out.
Thank you. Anything else, City Manager?
That is all for now.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Thank you. No statement, Mr. Mayor.
Chief.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two things really quick. This year, the Special Olympics torch run is going to be taking place on June 15th. They are changing the route, and other years they're condensing it. It's going to start at the PD and end at the courthouse here. The time that's going to start hasn't been given yet, but we'll be putting something out on social media. So if anyone wants to participate, wants to donate, or wants to run with the combined law enforcement in our area, my understanding is the Sheriff's Department, Probation Department, the District Attorney's Office are all going to participate, and we're inviting the public also to be part of this. Secondly, our motorcycle officers, we've had some officers off of training. They've moved off of FTO and they're on their own. So we're going to be releasing the motorcycles to their patrolling traffic. Officer Wells, who was here a little while ago, and Officer Anderson are going to be on their motorcycles patrolling June 21st, and that'll be their assignment through the summer. And just advising them, no warnings, just go out there and do your job with the traffic. I know it's been lacking and very much needed, but they're fully trained. They've already completed their required classes and courses through the state, and they're ready to go. So June 21st, they're going to be out there. That's all.
Excellent news. Thank you, sir. City Clerk.
Thank you. So I think I heard tonight that I have clear consensus to move forward with working with City Attorney Epperson on a campaign.
Finance reform?
Yes, campaign reform. Okay. That's it. See you, who's ever going to be there, see you Saturday, because I'll be there on Saturday too for the dog park. Thanks, Tina.
That's it?
We bring our dogs, right?
Yeah. I always got my Yes, you do. G3.
Amber, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amber Cameron, Associate Planner. I'm here tonight for an item to schedule an appeal hearing on May 5th, 2021. Alex Sidewalk filed an appeal with the Planning Department of the actions taken by the Planning Commission at the April 22nd, 2021 regular Planning Commission meeting, which denied the applicant's request to remove condition number 55, which requires the applicant to provide an emergency vehicle access prior to the issuance of a building permit, and uphold the findings and conditions contained within PC Resolution 2016-11 for tentative map 2015-9 as originally adopted. Staff is here tonight to request that the City Council of the City of Hollister set an appeal hearing date for August 2nd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Any speaker cards?
I have no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is August 2nd all right with council? Yes. Consensus for that meeting. Okay. Thank you. H, I, J, and K, there's no business. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Good night, everyone, and thank you.